Well, welcome to Conversations with Helen. The reason why we're here today is because we wanted to dive deeper into two iconic Aussie brands, Afterpay and Bob Jane T-Marts. We're going to look today into the history of building a franchise and how you can establish continued growth. So I want to introduce you now to Kelly, who is Head of Franchising for Afterpay, and Rod Jane, who's the CEO of Bob Jane T-Marts.
Hello.
Over to you both.
Well, Rod, I think to start out, we all have a burning question that we would love for you to answer. How did you guys come up with the iconic Bob Jane jingle?
Well, yeah, it was a clever idea. I was born the year it sort of came into it. Its song, but I think it was my uncle Bill James, so Bob's brother, and Philip Adams. So Philip Adams was in advertising, and Bill and Philip went to Bob and said, "Hey, we've got this tyre business. Let's sort of start this franchising business called Bob Jane T-Marts, and let's put it all together." And Bob said to Bill at the time, "No, that's a really dumb idea. Call it Bill Jane T-Marts and you do it." And Bill's like, "No, well, Bob, you're doing all the racing. My dad won the Australian Touring Car Championship in 71, 72, I think it was." And they're like, no, we're going to call it Bob Jane T-Marts. We're going to put your face on the building. And, and the jingle was a part of that process of bringing together this concept of Bob Jane T-Marts.
It's hilarious.
Wow.
How much it's really resonated, because as I was telling people that I was going to be coming here to interview you, everyone would say, "Oh yeah, Bob Jane," and then they would sing the jingle right afterwards, and so It's just impressive. Like, every Aussie knows this jingle. So well done to you and to the team that created it.
Yeah, it's I'm 53. I was tormented by it at school. Like, people used to sing it to me to annoy me, and I've now got 4 kids, and people sing it to them. And then if their friends sort of know me, and I'm walking past a footy field or something, they'll sing it to me. Or So it's really well known. It was very clever by Bill and Philip Adams and my dad to sort of come up with the concept to start with.
Incredible.
Wow.
All right, so Rod, for our listeners that aren't familiar with the Bob Jane history and the brand, can you take us through how it was established and just a little bit about the company?
Yeah, so it was, we got into tyres by mistake. So my dad had a Jaguar dealership. Jaguars came out with a tyre on it. There was a bias ply tyre. It was in the 60s, I think 1962. And the tyres would wobble as the car would slow down. And a friend of my dad's from Sydney, and they were bringing Peterbilt trucks, and they got a Telex from a company in Germany. Yeah, Telex. So, and anyway, the Telex was full to tyres for trucks. My dad's mate didn't want them. He posted that down to my dad. My dad got it, and he wrote back to him and said, "Oh, look, I don't want truck tyres. I need car tyres that might fix this problem I've got on this Jag with Avon tyres." They wrote back saying, yeah, of course we supply Mercedes-Benz, we have tyres. So he bought the tyres, they fixed the problem, and then, as my dad would say, we really started importing tyres. Before he knew it, his parts room at the Jaguar dealership was so full of tyres, they had to sort of move them out. Then they rented a place on the corner of Queensbury and Rathdown Street in Melbourne. Filled that up with tyres, started wholesaling tyres to anyone that wanted them for, I think it was £12.99. Which was really cheap, and he would say there was a sort of duopoly or a conglomerate of manufacturers that wouldn't sell to him, because he then started trying to buy tyres in Australia. So he then just became a discounter. And then, as the success of discounting started, as I said before, Bill Jane and Philip Adams sort of went and had a look at franchising in America. We did our first franchise officially in July 1972, and it's quite a funny story, because they came back and said, "Hey Bob, we've got this concept called franchising," and I think we were like 6 months after McDonald's, so I think we were the second franchise in Australia. And my dad's like, "Oh, that's a crazy idea." And John, who's still alive, he's 80, he wrote the first franchise agreement, and John actually told me the whole story. So he says, "Your dad says to me, all right, I want this franchise agreement you guys are all talking to me about, it's got to be on one page." And John sort of went away, tried to write it. And then he came back and he said, "Bob, can it be a long page, and can it be double-sided?" And he's like, "Yeah, as long as it's one page." Yeah. And so they did it on this long, it's a yellow piece of paper with black, typeface on it. and a green signature from Han Summers, who bought the first franchise. So, they sold the concept to Bob. Bob loved the concept, and then we were wholesaling tyres to a gentleman called Han Summers, who's still around. I still see him once a year. And Hans bought the first franchise. And as my dad would say, he's this crazy German immigrant, came out after the Second World War with his mum and his brother. And he had a petrol station, a car service centre, and was buying wholesale tyres from us. And Bob would say, and so everyone said, there's this crazy German guy that paid, I think it was $1,000 or whatever, it might have been pounds back then, but I think it was $1,000 to put my name and my face on his building and then have to buy tyres from me. And as Hans would say, I was so stupid that the next year I bought the second franchise. So he had Tarman and Bondi right up until I think it was 2013 or 14 when he sold out. Lovely guy, and he said it was the best thing he ever did. Set him up for life, and it was so the entry into franchising was thanks to Bill and Philip and John Reiner, and then my dad sort of ran with the concept, and my dad was the big picture guy with the how to sell the idea and how to get it moving.
Excellent.
Did you guys ever think that you would expand beyond Australia, or are there plans eventually to expand further?
So we did right at the start of the financial crisis, which I think was 1997 or 98. We actually did an agreement with Gajah Tunggal in Indonesia, so they'd actually built the foundations of a Bob Jane tyre store, and then the financial crisis hit and hit their business particularly badly, and we never sort of completed that process. So we've looked at it, but I think today we sit here and go, there's still so much opportunity in Australia that we're not really looking overseas at the moment, but one day maybe.
Fair enough. So with your first store opening in 1964, first franchise in 1972, you're now at 137 stores nationwide. How has Bob Jane over the years navigated the different competitive pressures that you faced?
It's a really interesting question, because I think when you look at it, there's internal pressures and there's external pressures. So obviously there's the idea of growth, which is cash flow constraints and the ability to find sites and find people. So I think we grew really quickly in the 70s and the 80s. We had fairly rapid expansion, and then we had a lot of financial trouble in the late 80s, the early 90s and the late 90s, and there was probably 3 phases where the business almost went broke in those 3 cycles. So it was quite a challenging process to get growth, sustainable growth, and not have failure. So I was in the business. I started working in the business in 1990 after I finished school, and grew up in the tyre stores, fitting tyres. The concept obviously was you had to know the business from the ground up. My dad didn't really run the business in the 90s, so it was from about 1983 to about 1999 it was run by 3, we'll call it 2 directors, Murray Riding and Alan Coleman, who really brought the glue to the business, and then we had this amazing state team that ran all our states. And so when I sort of fronted up to work in the business, they're like, off you go work in a tyre store, learn how to fit tyres and go from there. And so, I got to sort of see those tough cycles, but more from a store side. But we had this incredible group of humans that ran the business with, a love for the business. We had these amazing franchisees, a few of them are still with us. A lot of those guys are retiring, but we've still got probably 4 or 5 of those guys in the system still today. So some of those franchisees have been with us 30, 40 years.
Like family now.
Yeah, well, it is family. Like our business is a family business. We've got so many people that have been with us over 20, 30, 35 years. Milton, who's at Taringa, for example, his dad worked for my dad in 1962, and Milton's a franchisee, was a state manager, and so he's been with us since I think my dad would say he used to wash cars in 1967. He started washing cars for us in a car dealership.
Wow.
So we've got intergenerational. We've got a second generation now running franchise stores, or we've got a couple of examples. We've got a father running one store and the son's bought another store. So it is a family business. I think the hardest time we had was really 99 to 2002, where we really did almost get sold up by the bank. That's when I was stepped in as CEO, and I was 30. It was a challenging time, but managing those cycles has been probably some of the best lessons I had. But I think that's the beauty of franchising. So we got through those cycles because we had so many people that were bought into the success of the business, and our franchisees were incredible in the cycle that I went through that was really challenging. And we had a lot of friction. We had our franchisees suing us, and that was our fault. So they weren't doing anything wrong other than trying to protect themselves. But then when we sort of brought the glue together, family and a franchise family, and everyone sat in a room, and I said, well, I'm here to fix it. No one believed I could, probably including me. But when they worked out that you were really committed to it, and that, as I'd say to them, I've got just as much to lose as you do, so we've got to fix this together. It really then changed the whole dynamic, and everything. That journey of repair was incredible, and now we've got this amazing group of franchisees that have been with us a long time, and new people coming. So it's a learning experience for me too.
Sounds like a lot of trust was built during that period too, to know that you really were there to back them, and you were going to come together and focus on the problems and be open and honest about it. Someone I know has a really good saying that they prefer to have open and honest conflict versus dishonest harmony. And it sounds like you really mastered that during that period. Yeah,
we call it, I call it with my kids happy consensus, which means like, when my daughters fight, we've got 4 kids, but my 2 daughters that went through a period, they fought a lot, and I'd sort of make them go to the laundry and they'd come out and say, well, she did this, and I'm like, no, that's not happy consensus. Go back in there and come out and tell me what really happened, and we'll move on from there. But with our franchisees, it was, we will have the conflict we need to have, but it's the best way to have that conflict is if everyone knows that we're all trying to get the right outcome. So we will tend to come into a situation where there's a problem, we'll try and problem solve it. Now, if that needs some friction to solve the problem, that our franchisees aren't shy at that friction, and neither are we. So if we see them doing something wrong, we'll confront the issue as well. But now Alex, who's the other director of Bob Jane with me, he's been with me almost 30 years. When Alex or I have those conversations with the franchisees, you can literally sit there. If someone's going, well, this is unfair, just go, hang on, guys. When was the last time we weren't fair? And they're like, oh, yeah, fair point, right? So it's like, now let's just work through the problem, what we've done wrong or what you've done wrong.
Yes.
I had a franchisee ring me the other day complaining about some product and price issues. And I'm like, I know there's a problem. And he's like, yeah, I thought you would. And I'm like, but tell me your perspective on it, and I'll go away and, because I'm working on it myself, but I will go away and look at your perspective. And I actually said to him, and when we think we've got this solution, there's 2 or 3 of you guys I want to come and have a look and say, does this solve the problem? Because I know it from my perspective, but you know it from hands-on in front of the customer, whether it's going to help you.
Absolutely. Now, you clearly are quite skilled with conflict management. Where did you learn that type of skill set? Is there a mentor that you had, or is it just something that over years of negotiations you've mastered the art?
Look, my dad called it the milk run. It comes up quite often. So when I started, he pretty much just started taking me out when I was 6. Like, he'd say, it was a Saturday, and he'd say, oh, come with me. We'd get in the car and we'd drive. We had car dealerships and tyre stores. So we'd drive to Southern Motors, and I'd have to just sit there and listen to him talk. And my dad was a very combative person, right? He loved combat. He was very aggressive. And so I saw a lot of that, and I experienced it right through, really all the way through into the late 90s and early 2000s. And I would say that I was... he was my role model because I spent so much time with him. So when I took over the business, I had this wonderful guy, Peter Hamden, join Alex and I in 2002. I used to buy tyres from Peter at Bridgestone, and Peter came and saw me in late 2001 and said, look, I'm leaving Bridgestone. And I said, oh, would you come work with me? And he's like, no. He goes, no, I'm taking 6 months off. He goes, no, I've got plenty of offers and I'm not coming to work with you, and I live in Adelaide. So I rang him, but got his wife Tracy in early 2002, and I begged her to convince Peter to come and work with us. And anyway, when Peter started in 2000, 2, I think he was sitting in his office one day. He moved to Melbourne with his family, Tracy and their kids, and I'm having this tremendous blue. Like, we're in a lot of pressure. The business was in trouble. The bank was selling all our assets, and so it'd be fair to say we're under a lot of pressure. And I was sort of going a bit crackers at somebody, and sort of they left, and Peter came in, quietly shut the door, and he said, "Look, Rod," he knew my dad pretty well. He's like, "I know what your dad's like, and he's a great role model, but that's not how we behave." And so Peter sort of took all the. So I got all the good bits my dad taught me about negotiation and all that sort of things, and then I say that Peter refined that and sort of made it a much calmer model. So I learned it from a lot of people, but I think I was pretty lucky when my dad didn't pay me very well when I was young, which is not a problem. But my uncle, his brother, had a car dealership, so Bill knew that. So Bill would say, "Come down here," and we'd have a cup of tea or a coffee, and he'd say, "All right, now I've got this cheap car here. It might be a Cortina or something." He'd say, "Look, it owes me like $700. He goes, "So you take it, you sell it, and when you sold it, pay me." And I'd say, "Well, what's it worth, Bill?" He goes, "Well, I reckon it might be worth about $1,500. And so I'd go put it in the trading post. 2-3 weeks later, I'd sell it, and then I'd pay Bill for it, and then he'd sell me another car. So I learnt to buy and sell stuff. And then when I finished school, we had a whole lot of things when we built Calder Park, a racetrack we owned. There was everything from open bowl scrapers to truck tyres to excavators to earth movers to you name it. We had every tool. We had a concrete batching plant, and my dad's like, "I need you to sell all that stuff." So I just learnt to haggle and sell, and my dad loved that, and I learnt the art of selling through doing stuff like that. So I think that brings you into conflict negotiation as well. It's the reality of it is conflict's not really good for anyone.
Yep.
Friction's not a bad thing, but conflict's sort of never really healthy. So it's okay when it drives an outcome, but it's got to be productive, I think. And the sake of conflict, you've just got to try and dissipate the energy out of it and bring it back to what the real problem is.
Yeah, and get that common goal that you're working
Yeah.
towards. Absolutely. As a franchisor, you obviously carry a lot of weight on your shoulders of making sure your franchisees are successful. I imagine part of that is making sure that you're getting the right people in the right roles and that you're bringing on the right type of talent to manage your franchisees. How does Bob Jane manage that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess as I talked earlier, when I came into the business, we had a lot of franchisees that were in trouble. When our business was in trouble, their business was in trouble. And looking at that, as we started to turn the business around, it became really obvious we had people that had come in that were undercapitalised. We had people that had come in that weren't committed to the business. And our business is particularly hands-on. To run a Bob Jane franchise well, you have to be in the store, hands-on, look after your customers. You look at all of our successful franchisees, and they have these intergenerational relationships with their customers, and it's I love it. You walk in and they might have 3 generations of a family that come to them get their tyres. They'll know most of them by name, and the customer will know the franchisee by name, and so I think that's amazing. And then when I was looking at it in the early 2000s, you sort of went, all right, we've got to change the model by which people come to our business. And so we now have we have a financial criteria that people have to meet. It's a very strict financial criteria because I don't like debt. You go through the financial problems we had and you become averse to debt. And so I think debt's great for growth, but it's not good for a long-term outcome. My dad thought debt was great because it's tax, its interest is tax deductible, and I'm like, no, that's the wrong way to look at it. So we tend to try and get our franchisees to come in low debt. We've got a criteria on it, and then I've spent the last 15 years of my life, every franchise conference we do every year, I'm like, guys, pay off your most expensive debt first. So it might be your overdraft facility, your leasing facility, right? Get to own all your equipment, own all your stock, right? Have cash in the bank, right? Once you've got cash in the bank, when there's specials on, buy lots of specials. Specials give you good returns. And so, cash, when we were in the thick of our trouble, we were managed by Calder Mentha and later, or before that, Arthur Anderson's, and Mark Mentha used to say after every meeting, Rod, just don't forget cash is king. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, cash is king. And I'd just be like, whatever, Mark. And he'd sort of leave. And And I learnt that cash is king, and that is what's been important for our business, is to manage cash and cash flow and our debt and everything else, and the same goes for franchising. So we have once they meet the financial criteria, we have minimum 6 months induction, which is you come in, you work in our franchise stores, you work in the store you're going to run, you get it to the number where it needs to be in order for you to buy it and be profitable. And if you can't get that, we might give you an extension. And I'm really brutal about it, whether I'm employing someone or trying to get a new franchisee. Like, I tell them the worst bits of our business, because I don't know, when I got married, I sort of told my wife, before she was my wife, all the bad things about me. I'm like, so if you don't like that, I'm like, don't stick around, because that's me.
Yep.
And we do it a lot at work, and a lot of people that are new to our business say, why do you tell everyone all the bad stuff? I'm like, because it's there, it's real. We're not a perfect business. Yeah. Everyone sort of thinks, oh, Bob Jane, it's amazing. Look, outside it's this great business, great brand, everything. It's a really good business, but like every business, we've got our challenges, we've got our problems, and I think it's only fair to tell an employee or a franchisee what your strengths and weaknesses are, and on the way in, we tell them you've got to have a plan to get out, and we make them write that plan now. So what's the purpose behind joining us? When do you know is the time to get out? So you've got that plan as to what's your exit strategy? What are you trying to achieve in the middle? And we reiterate it as they come through the induction process, and at the franchise meetings every year, I tell the guys, the day you turn up and put the key in the door and you're going, what am I doing here? Like, just even questioning it, put your business up for sale. Like, it's a 2 to 3 year process. Like, to find a new person that's going to buy your franchise, it's 2 to 3 years. So, the day you have the hesitation to put the business up for sale, because imagine how you're going to feel in 3 years if you didn't like it 3 years ago, right? Yeah. So we try and spend a lot of time on the entry, and we spend a lot of time on the exit, trying to encouraging both sides of that. And I think the thing that's come from it is we do sort of this mid 6 month process. So these new franchisees will come to Melbourne. They'll spend a week in our office. We do all this intense sort of training before they go on their second part of their 3 months. And a whole lot of us will go to the pub with them and have dinner, 2 or 3 times while they're here that week, and just talk. And a lot of the next step of the end of the 6 months, is you'll sit with them at the national conference, and people say, like, when you guys told me it was 6 months to get in, we just thought that was the dumbest thing ever. And then they're like, but it was just the best thing ever. Yeah. And it's because I think if you step into any business, I know ours, you get hit by cash flow, staff issues, stock issues, customers that aren't happy because the tyre didn't turn up and they've wasted the day coming to you. So, and they're all hard things to learn to juggle. Our point of sale system's hard to use. Our stock management's hard to do. And you come into that, like, you think about it, if you don't have time to learn it, we're pretty much saying, here's the keys. That's what we used to say. Here's the keys. There's the store. See you later. and we'll give you some training. And so that was wrong. And so now it's like, and we say to them at 3 months, we're like, so guys, if you're hesitating about, is this the right place for you? It's the wrong place for you. Don't come. Yeah. This is not your place. If you're not like sort of wetting your pants going, where am I going with this? When can I get in? When am I going to drive this business myself? Don't come.
Yeah.
Right, because it's not the right place for you. So, and that in turn has brought us some incredible franchisees. Yeah. Because they bring something that even I don't understand now. We've got people that are, I thought I used to know what a good store was, and now I look at we've got 3 or 4 stores now that just blow my mind. And, I would I use one of them as an example at a conference a couple of years ago, and I rang him. I'm like, just before I talk about your store, like, are you sure you know what you're doing? Like, the stock you've got, you got a lot of stock. And he's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, what's the turn rate on your stock? And he tells me, I'm like, okay, so you're not stuck with any. And he goes, no, I'm turning it all over. It's all good. And I'm like, and, he's been doing it now. Well, a number of our franchises have been doing it now sustainably for a long period of time. And so they're teaching us lessons now, which is wonderful.
I suppose that's sort of the benefit of becoming a franchisee with a group like yours, where you're able to learn from your other franchisees in the business. You're able to learn from your franchisor that's going to have all those years of experience and all of that know-how that if you do join, you're not starting on your own. You kind of have that network to help support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will, in that 6 months, depending on how the incoming franchisee talks to us, we'll say, all right, so they're going to connect well with that franchisee there. And we send them off, and it's amazing how generous franchisees are. So they'll spend a week with it. They'll let a new incoming franchisee come spend a week at their store. If we've got a franchisee that's in trouble, we'll have guys, and they're pretty brutal about it. Like, we'll have guys. We had a store that was in trouble a while ago, and I sort of approached 3 franchisees in the state, and I'm like, this guy needs help, right? And they're like, okay, we'll go and help. So off they went to help, and then we were at a Christmas function. I'm like, well, how did you go with him? Like, no, we give up. No, he's not listening. And I'm like, no, guys, it's not that easy. You don't have a right to give up. He's family.
Yeah.
Right, go and help him again. They're like, but Rod, he's not listening to us. I'm like, he's not listening to me either, but we don't have the right to not give up. And they're like, all right, we'll go and have another go. I'm like, go give it a go, guys, and don't muck around. Sort of talk about how you're donating your time to help his business, and give it to him between the eyes, but help him. And so they'll go back and they'll try again. And I think that's the wonderful thing about franchising. If you've got the right people in your franchise, they truly do want to see the rest of the family succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we've even seen that at Afterpay as we brought on different franchise groups. It's amazing where all it takes is that one franchisee to have that great experience with us, and then it's like a fire is set off, and we're suddenly getting, oh, I spoke to this person, they said they got this result, we definitely want to sign up, how quickly can you get us live? And it just becomes this almost waterfall effect of, it only takes one to do well, and then that influencer impacts the whole brand.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, so if you take look, we haven't used Afterpay yet, right? And I'm not a consumer of Afterpay, I'm probably too old, right? But but if you look at it, our guys are the same. They'll take something, we'll be pretty selective how we introduce stuff. But we see ourselves as a holistic business. So, introducing Afterpay, it's all our stores or none of our stores. So we're very firm on that. We're not at participating stores.
Yep.
So, but the good part about it is, once they see something's really good, they just run with it, right? So I think, the beauty of something like Afterpay is, you appeal to a certain demographic of humans.
Yes.
And, that helps every business. And then, I think everyone's got a payment choice, right? So, whether it's credit card, cash, or EFTPOS, or however they want to pay, it just gives an alternate choice of people deciding how they want to pay as opposed to a business deciding how someone should pay.
That's exactly right. And I think that's the interesting part too. We recently did a study with looking at millennials and Gen Z and Aussies overall, and what we found is that over 50% of customers will actually not purchase if their preferred payment option isn't available.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, the majority of Aussies prefer to use a debit card. So going back to that mindset of cash is king, I don't want to spend money that I don't have. Afterpay is actually just almost a layer up from that, where we allow all of our customers to spread out that payment over time, but they're using debit cards on the back end to process the payment. So really leaning into that debit economy.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we do have some exciting news to share. As of tomorrow, I think we'll be making a pretty big announcement where Afterpay and Bob Jane have, after many years...
After 5 or 6 years of negotiation.
Hey, we got there in the end. We did say you were a great negotiator, to be fair.
I don't know about that, but it was a long negotiation.
Yeah, but we are really looking forward to having Bob Jane join the Afterpay family. We also kind of see all of our partners as a family, and our partners like the Franchise Council of Australia are also part of our wider family, so... It's great to have you guys on board.
Well, I think our franchisees are super excited, and all the team that have been putting it together with your team are really excited. So it'll be fascinating for us to watch, how it unfolds.
Yeah. I have a suspicion that we're going to have some customers celebrating with us.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
I think so. Helen, is there anything that you wanted to add? I feel like I've been talking quite a bit. Are there any questions that you have from your perspective?
No, I think Rod pretty much answered lots. I love your connection with your franchisees, and I guess everything that you've done has increased longevity in your franchisees.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at a business, my view is that I'm just a custodian of our brand. Like, I didn't create it. I didn't start it, and I was sort of thrown in the deep end to take it over at a point in time. But I'm just here to protect the brand for the time I'm here, and then I say to the franchisees when we're having debates about stuff that, you know, I'll be judged at the end of my time here, and I will have either done a good job, a bad job, there'll be mixed opinions, whatever it is. But what I will do is make long-term decisions for the best outcome that I can foresee for the business. And that's all I can do, is try and grow the business, look after the people in it. And every business, it's about our people. And our business has got incredible people at every layer of it. So whether it's a tyre fitter or a wheel liner working really hard in the stores, or someone in marketing or finance running the business. So, you know, I think the challenge for us all is to just sort of build for the long term and try not to make short-term decisions to meet sort of criteria that tick a box or get a financial outcome or please someone. I think the best outcome is long-term thinking that means you can make decisions that may look like the business is going backwards, but ultimately are taking it forwards.
Excellent.
You know, you just reminded me of something, Rod. When we first spoke, you shared a story about how Bob Jane was thinking about sustainability long before it was on trend, I suppose, to be a sustainable business. Can you share with our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, so I think if you look at the three of us that have run the business for a long time, Alex, Peter and I, Alex grew up in Vietnam, came to Australia, lived in the Commission Flats around Flemington. Peter grew up in a place called Elliston, and I grew up in a place just near Cranbourne on a farm. And we all sort of came from a background that was quite conservative. And so on our farm we had gravity-fed water that was fed from a bore or rainwater. My mum it still is quite conservative. She doesn't like wasting anything. She thinks I'm quite wasteful now. So really, you know, we didn't have heating in our house. We had a wood heater in the living room. So we all grew up in this sort of sustainable environment. If a water trough broke on our farm, I'd fix it. You'd put all the parts away. You'd keep tyre tubes and things to fix everything. But everything got recycled, and my grandfather was the same, and you know, my mum's still the same, and Peter came from a similar background, and so did Alex. And so when we were looking at our business, we sort of woke up in, I think it was about 2008 or 9, and we went, like, guys, like our franchisees and our company stores, we've got all these tyre casings, used tyres getting picked up. And we're like, we don't really know where they're going, do we? And we couldn't answer the question. We're sort of like, well, you know, do we think that's right? And Peter and Alex and I went, no, we don't think it's right. So we need to sort of work out what's going on. So we sort of sat down and went, okay, well, how about, you know, for every tyre we sell to a store, we make them pay for a tyre to get picked up. So we included the disposal in the drop-off, you know, or in the price of the tyre they bought was the price of the disposal of an old tyre they took off. And we did a national contract with Tyre Cycle to pick up all the casings. Tyre Cycle were approved by the government at the time, you know, under a recycling program. So then we said, all right, well, if we do this, we know where every single tyre is going that we take off a car. Well, near enough to every single tyre. Of course, some customers take them and do other things, and people steal tyres out of our tyre stacks in the stores. But basically, most of the tyres that we took off, we knew where they were going. We knew they were getting sustainably recycled or disposed of in a way that was appropriate. So we did that just through a sort of moral point of view, that we didn't know whether they were being dumped in a forest or a river or where they were going, and we went, we've got to take responsibility for that channel of how our waste product gets sort of disposed of. So we did that. Geez, it was probably 3 or 4 years before the industry started talking about. Might have been 2 or 3, but it was way before the industry actually did anything about it. And I think that's just. Like I think if we look at it, we've all got an obligation. I look at it through the lens of my kids, as did Peter and Alex, and we went, well, what's right for our kids? And what's right for our kids is what's probably right for the planet, because if we want to give them the right outcome, then, you know, we've got to sort of take charge of what we're dealing with.
I love that story. Isn't that cool?
Great story.
Yeah, it's common sense though, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is, but it's something that you can easily ignore it if you don't pay attention to those little details.
Yeah.
So it's impressive that you guys did that early on.
Yeah, well, but then there's probably still a lot more we can do, and I think the world's changing fast. What I do like is, and my wife Penny spent a lot of time looking at this, there's a lot of opportunities coming for recycling, which means we sell a really wasteful product. Like you sort of throw 90% of what you have away at the end of it.
Yep.
And so you think about that, it's got a lot of products in it, a lot of oil, natural oil, synthetic. Sorry, it's got oil, it's got synthetic rubber, natural rubber, steel, nylon, rayon, carbon, silica, all sorts of things in it.
Yeah.
And you sort of take that, use it, and wear about sort of 7-10 mil of tread off it, then you throw the whole casing away. So if you think that you can take that and actually turn it into something that gets used again, the whole industry's focused on it. Last year I had the opportunity to go to a number of manufacturers' research centres, and everyone's looking at every possible way to try and get it back into a cycle to reuse it again. So I think it's really exciting where the world's going. I think we're changing quickly and realising that disposal isn't a great solution to just throw everything we sort of construct back into landfill somewhere.
Yeah, and it's important to make sure that we can find other solutions, and it'll be exciting to see whatever comes out of all of these different working groups of what you can do with tires in the future.
It will.
Very cool. Well, look, I would love to end this podcast, if we can, on a bit of a high note. I feel like you are a very inspirational person, and your father's inspirational, and you've also done all of this with the racing in your background as well. Is there anything that you can leave our audience with on a lesson or something that, when times are tough, and they are in those situations like you were in back in the 1999 to 2002 era, how do you push through those moments? How do you wake up and go, I can do this?
Jesus, there's a number of steps to it. I think you've got to be inherently... Well, I think you've got to love what you do, primarily within yourself. And I love what I do. I think I tell my family I'm the luckiest person I know. I sort of evolved in a family business, and I happen to love every moment of it. So I think that's a great start.
Yes.
And then you've got to... People, I think, were my greatest success, are the people around me. I've had a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me, and a lot of them have stayed with me a long time. And so those people are the ones that have created the success. And then I just think it comes down to attitude. I think if you've got the right attitude and you've got the right people with the right attitude, it's sort of the whole thing gets a lot easier. So, and then the final thing is, I think you've got to have fun.
Yes.
We've always had fun. With the people I talk about, particularly the ones I'm close with that I work with every day, it's always been fun. And so if you love what you do and you're having fun, and everything else I said in the middle, it sort of makes the whole thing purposeful.
Yeah.
Love that.
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure getting to hear more about the Bob Jane history and the business and all that you guys have achieved. So well done to you, and looking forward to our partnership going forward, and thank you.
That's a pleasure. We're super excited about tomorrow, see how it all goes, and
Yeah.
Hopefully customers will say, well, it's the right approach for us, and it's been really nice talking to you guys. It's I don't often talk about our business, so it's something different for me.
Well, it's been absolutely great. Well, it was more conversations with Kelly and Rod rather than Helen today, but great listening, and the big takeaway, love what you do, and your connection with your people is paramount to your business.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And that
thank
passion for helping your franchisees reach their goals,
Yeah.
and that it is this family business where we're going to achieve together, not just me, the franchisor, is going to benefit while you suffer as my franchisee. I love how you're very connected with them. So.
Well, I think you've got to realise in franchising that a successful franchisor without a successful franchisee doesn't work.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, the math
And a
doesn't add up.
successful franchisee without a successful franchisor doesn't work either. So if you can't work that out, you're never going to have a good franchising business, I don't believe. That's my belief. And I think our franchisees, we debated that point a very long time ago when in the financial sort of challenges we were in, and that was the conclusion we all reached. So they're like, well, you've got to survive and we've got to survive.
Yeah.
And we've got to do that profitably together. And
Yeah.
so, there's the friction in the balance of that, but it's still got to be successful on both sides.
Absolutely. Well said.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, Rod, Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to Conversations with Helen today. And that was a very real, raw and inspiring conversation today with Bob Jane T-Marts, obviously, 1972 starting franchising. And then we've got Afterpay, an Aussie brand that is helping people, just make better purchases.
Just manage their cash flow.
And manage their cash flow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.